we want to pay you money to investigate this, give us some language. Well, the language shifted in 50s from exploring. In other words, language all around exploring a reverse engineering of a foreign technology, and then shifted over to exploiting, recreating, and this kind of a deal. So I knew that they'd achieved some fundamental breakthrough, and that indeed Dolan was probably correct, that they've had all of this technology working since the mid-50s. And the big lie is that there is no UFOs. Crop circles are created by a couple of college kids or, drunk fellows out of a pub, that Atlantis didn't exist, and that the big lie is basically the entire picture of reality that's been created for us by the powers that be and inculcated into all of us through the education system within the Anglosphere and increasingly throughout the whole planet. So the lie itself was cemented then in the 50s when they had reached a certain level of power, and then at that point what I think of as the shadow world or the black ops world went off on its own and has been, I won't say self-supporting, but certainly self-directed since then. And the big lie will dissolve. It has to dissolve as a concurrent phenomena to the rise or the spread of the technologies and so forth that the secret societies or secret shadow operations have developed. They're in kind of a bind if you think about it, because in a sense they're like the advanced civilization that came to the Americas from Spain and Portugal. And only instead of coming on in and conquering everybody, they snuck in the middle of the night, and they set up a secret city somewhere where they started developing all of the technologies that would lead to where we're at, the industrial civilization. But in the middle of the Mayan society at the time, at some point there would be a discovery, if you will, of the aliens in their midst by the Mayans, and then the secret's out, and then pretty soon all of the technology starts leaking out, and once it starts leaking out, it becomes a veritable flood, and then the big lie around the whole shadow ops in all of our history begins to dissolve, and that I think is truly at the core of the powers that be in their fear.
Wow. And I think it's so fascinating to really think about the idea of how much or misinformation is put out there by the boys, just to keep us on our toes. I mean, for example, and I wonder now how this fits into the linguistics. Our man Andrew Goss told us 2.5 years ago that it really wasn't the subprime loans, of course, that was a problem. They could have taken $150 billion, 150B, paid off everything.
Yeah.
Every single one, 2.5, every one, even one, just, it would have been done. But to this day, of course, the media continues to call it the subprime crisis, and if you say that enough, millions and millions of people believe that, right?
Correct.
You just keep saying it. Now, when you have this kind of stuff going on, and that must just be one example of hundreds and hundreds or thousands, right, of programming that goes on in the media. Is that a fair?
Continuous, yes. In fact, they pay vast quantities of money.
Oh, I bet they do. Yeah.
For that, and also for all the disinfo guys that are out all over the internet, and they're spending actually an increasingly large percentage of their operational budgets are having to go towards disinfo and propaganda.
Well, what does that do to your work when most of the people, are just dealing from this illusion? So what does it matter what they say? I
hear what you're saying.
Okay.
The issue for impacting my particular forecasting is that it probably wouldn't work without that.
It wouldn't work without it.
If we were all aware individuals and put real thought into what we were saying and concentrated and were contemplating our actions and self-aware, then we would be far less likely to inadvertently leak out the psychic information. And so I think
why? I mean,
because of the vibrational frequency kind of thing. It's like, in other words, if I'm a self-aware individual and I'm sitting here thinking about universe, and I'm sort of aware the universe is talking to me, then I will interact with universe, and it will not have to manifest a synchronicity in the forms of my language leaking out in an attempt to slap me upside the head and get my attention.
Okay.
Makes sense?
Yeah. If you're right in tune there, that there's no need to really concern yourself about high water in 2 years because you already know it's coming. And
correct. Correct. And so you won't leak it out that way. You'll go quietly about your business and that sort of thing.
Yeah,
correct.
Yeah.
That's my operational theory in any event.
I like
and
that.
So the vast, slumbering, twisting, heaving mass of consciousness that is.
I like the way you put that.
That is the internet forms a standing wave against which I check for nuance changed.
Ooh. Okay, let's see. Lots of times people call up this number to try to listen, so do you have a question for Clif?
Yes, I do.
Go ahead. What's your first name?
John.
Okay, John, go ahead.
Good morning, Clif. I have a very specific question in regard to the prediction and reports from about a year ago regarding silver going to $600 an ounce.
600.
Okay.
I have found at least two, and I apologize for not having the references to cite for you right now, but I found at least two different sources on the web who were not quoting your work and don't appear to have any idea as to what you've been up to, that have made their own predictions that silver would go to $600 an ounce. And my question is, to what extent, isn't it possible that your predictive linguistics were really saying this is what people might be talking about, either on the web or day to day, and might just this language that I'm seeing show up, at least from two sources I found recently, might you not just be predicting that as opposed to silver really going to 600 an ounce? In other words,
sure, I got you. Yeah.
How do you differentiate between the actual manifestation and just the
language itself? And here's the deal. You're quite correct. The point of our work is to forecast the appearance of language in the future, not necessarily an event. And so, really, you're quite correct. We're forecasting the appearance of what's going to be in the newspaper a year from now, but if the writer of the article in the newspaper gets it wrong, so will we. Okay, and so that's quite correct. However, we have a validation process in this, and that has to do with the level at which the linguistics change, the rate at which that change manifests in real time in the now, in the future. So, in other words, if it were going to be 2 or 3 people talking about $600 an ounce silver, even if they had a lot of press behind them, we would pick that up and forecast that in a language that we're forecasting to appear. But we have more than that because we have the emotional impact and the weight of the wording as it's going to propagate out through more and more media. So in other words, when we made the forecast for the $600 an ounce silver, we were looking at more than a narrow slice of the language coming in, and we saw the impact of that $600 silver in other word sets throughout the various parts of model space. So in other words, here we go. We've got a forecast showing up. We get a forecast for someone's going to be talking about $600 an ounce silver. And it's going to be about a year and a half off in the future, and so we're going to forecast that. And that part was done. Now we can go and look in areas where we might expect to have a $600 an ounce silver actually show up and cause problems. Do we see such things? Yes, we do. We see lots of words around hyperinflation of food supply costs. We see lots of words around the hyperinflation of energy costs. We see lots of words around the deflation of things you don't need. And so there were other word sets around there that appeared at the same time relative to that forecast that suggested that we would see an actual impact on the society show up from that $600 an ounce silver. Did that make sense?
Yes. May I follow up with a quick question?
Sure, go ahead.
Sure.
Okay, I understand your point, how other word sets and the emotional sums suggest that, that prediction may be right to some extent, but does that really validate the $600 number? In other words, don't those other word sets just mean that, well, yeah, silver is going to go up a lot. It might be 400, it might be 800, but you can you really tie it to an actual verification of the $600 number?
Okay, here's how the numbers work in our work. Usually we throw numbers out because numbers, when they come through, the internet is nothing but numbers, filled with numbers. So we throw all the numbers out because they're meaningless. There's just too many of them. However, occasionally we get a weird situation where numbers come through in a numeric fashion, spelled out in various different languages. This is how we were able to say that prior to the tsunami, in that forecast, I was saying 300,000 people dead, and the nation kicked back to a previous age, and we were close on the 300,000. Those times we've used numbers. The 6.3 earthquake in Hawaii in the 50th state. I thought it would be the 50th parallel, but it was the 50th state. The 6.3 came through as 6.3, and then the 50 came through as the word 50. So we actually have the word showing up in 600 as though, excuse me, as though they're going to use that frequently in headlines in various different media. And so it will be at least that. I'm not saying it'll settle there. I mean, it might be 700-800. Who knows? But I know that at least in terms of our forecast, there will be significant presence within the mainstream media that will cause the number 600 to sink into people's heads as being associated with the price of silver and some level of stability. In other words, we'll cross through that number, hover around it, stick close to it, something. So it'll resonate within people's minds, and it's leaked out, and that's where we're at now. Of course, I could be 100% wrong. I mean, we're wrong half the time. Sure doesn't look that way because of the situation developing, but we'll see here in the near-term future.
Okay, thank you very much.
Well, you're quite welcome. 888-663-6386. We put you on hold. We'll pick it up live on the air. Cliff, something like silver, which is fascinating. We know that, of course, the boys are selling it short. J.P. Morgan, the biggest.
Goldman Sachs. Guys.
Big time. And there is some class action lawsuits that may actually yield some results, believe it or not, to stop them or to slow them down. Now.
I don't put much faith in the result of trying to get justice out of a corrupt court system.
Yeah, I tend to agree, but there are...
It may surprise us. The universe may surprise us.
Yeah, it may surprise. So I guess my question is this. If, in fact, that were going to be the case, would people involved in that, the J.P. Morgan people and other people, you would be able to pick up on that, and would that be part of a $600 prediction somehow? You know what I'm asking? In other words, is your technology cool enough to tie all this stuff together? People start talking about that linguistically?
Sure. Okay. Now
that
part it is.
It is.
If we were to get for instance, we have entities that are related to labels. A label might be Goldman Sachs because they're a big player.
Sure.
Okay, and also bear in mind we started off with the goal of using the technology to monkey around with the stock market, and I got distracted and never went there. But it was designed to deal with commercial and financial kinds of transactions, so it's relatively good about that. So we do see that kind of thing. However, that's not the case with the $600 silver. The $600 silver also, you also have to bear in mind that I don't take the results of the data and my interpretation of them without trying to fit them into a realistic model of the world. My realistic model of the world, I do things like resource analysis occasionally, probably once every 18 months now because I'm a little too busy. I used to do it once every year. And I'd take a month or so and I would go through and do this Buckminster-Fuller style resource analysis of all of the different things on the planet. And if you do that, you discover some remarkable things. China is about now probably 1/5 of the way through its national electrification process. Okay. The electrification process that they've been using so far, they've hit an area where they've been primarily dealing with copper. They're about to enter into that phase that's going to demand a lot of silver and gold, less gold than silver, but vast quantities of silver. Unfortunately, silver is a commercial